everybody. Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassie, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace and harmony. And today, we've been meaning to do this for a long time. My friend, Lionel Cole, is over there halfway around the world. I'm just here in Studio One of the worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society, not necessarily in the Himalayas in Nepal, but Lionel
Yeah.
Cole, the king, the
Whoa,
Grammy Award
whoa,
winner,
whoa.
hopefully more soon. Lionel Cole is coming at us from Australia, the big continent down there. How you
Woo.
doing, Lionel?
Uh,
Thanks for doing this. So
well,
great to see you.
it's really great to see you. It's Jefferson and I have the joy of being able to have had a lot of hangs on the porch talking about the higher meaning of life and and what it's meant to us. And I'm really excited, Jeff, to let people kind of see us chat and dream a little bit on this magic carpet ride, as you say. We're
Oh man, it is a magic carpet ride for sure. And yeah, we've mastered the porch hang.
We have mastered the porch hang, especially with the Jeffersonian or two in our hand.
Yeah, Jeffersonian, just a few music shamans sitting around on the porch talking
Yep,
about talking about everything there is.
yep.
So I met you through our mutual friend, the goddess of awesomeness, Tara Gorman.
Tara Gorman.
One day, it was pre-pandemic, the pandemic has sort of warped all time, but
It's true.
maybe 6 years ago, I can't remember. And you and Tara showed up at the door, our front door, and Tara said, "I think you should meet Lionel." I'm like,
Mhm.
and then
And
recently,
the bromance began.
bromance began, and then recently, when you were in the U.S. last year, I guess you stayed with us for some time, and we did get to be very close. I feel, brothers,
True.
and but it's an honor to know you and to know your life and to be a part of what you're doing now. Some couple of albums up for Grammy consideration and the history that you've had in the past. But maybe we just start off, and I know this could even be a complicated question for you, but how did music come into your life? I mean, you go back all the way to the beginning.
Yeah, well, I they've got a video which I think I can send you a little clip of, that you could play underneath this of me at just well, we're still living in New York, so I must be a year and a half at the piano.
Wow.
And my mom says I was banging at first, but I was playing, and I'll send you the video afterwards, and if you want to use it, it'll make you laugh. But it's I think probably, if I'm being honest, it was just trying to get my dad's attention. My pops came up in the shadow of his brother, and uh, he carried that cross very heavily, and so I always wanted to be useful, helping him break through. So I learned all the stuff I could to help push him in a certain direction, and got to use most of it for the last half of his life to help him kind of move from slight obscurity to legend, which was really fun. Because that was sort of my job in LA for a long time. When an artist would want to come back, like Robert Downey Jr. or Mariah Carey, they'd hire me and we'd write some songs and we'd go on a tour, and then they would blow up. And yeah, so the last big tour before the pandemic I did was with my father right before he died, and we raised his profile, and he got to go out like a rock star cowboy, which is what he wanted, and I got to mend fences and appreciate the man that he was as he died, and understand more the man he was that I grew up with.
Wow.
And that's pretty intense music, a musical, emotional, spiritual kind of journey. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, oftentimes I'll ask somebody, well, was your family musical, to blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, you grew up in one of the music families in the country in many ways. Freddie Cole, your father, brother of
Yeah.
Nat. And I mean, when family got together, were you all just people play music all the time, or it was in your blood? Was it the business? Was it just how was it? What was that like?
Well, I mean, I think I came out of the womb talking like this, so I think I scared most children, and the piano was always well, I was drums first, but the piano and drums were always my kind of best friends. Um, and people laugh a lot about the Cole family, like, I'm not quite third generation because dad was so much younger than Nat, but Nat, Natalie, my father, and me, and my cousin Eddie, of course, is still there out there doing Cirque du Soleil, leading Cirque du Soleil. Cool, but um, there are two and a half generations of family over 75 years in the music business. Family's been in the business, and last year, funnily enough, um, before I even decided to put out the Grammy, Nat's Christmas song crawled back up into the top 10 for Christmas music. Mariah, who I worked for a long time, her Christmas song overtook Nat's to become the most popular Christmas. And so my answer was to make a record called Cancel Christmas to go along with that.
Well, I mean, part of your upbringing was always you would be a little bit of the renegade, right?
Yeah, I think they call that a black sheep, and that would be that would be me. I actually put a record out that's called "Bittersweet Beautiful" a bunch of years ago, and it's called "The Diaries of a Black Sheep." You know?
Wow. But I mean, as a young musician, I mean, the I guess the goal couldn't have been really higher. You wanted to become, but you had to become just an excellent musician. I think one time you talked about you needed to know when Freddie was going to start. He wouldn't tell you what song
Yeah.
it was. Could you talk about that?
Well, I started as an actor, right? So I was playing music by 2 or 3. I had my first professional acting gig on stage at 6. I had my first national American TV show on ABC, the network ABC, when I was 9. And I had my first song published and recorded by my father when I was 10. I mean, I'd written songs before that, but the first published song, all after all these years, was recorded by my father. Yeah, it's a song I wrote when I was 10. Um, and like I said, music was just always my best friend. And the parent, you would think, with the lineage I have, we'd all be sitting around the fire, trading tunes, but they were old school professionals, and my dad was as close to a New York gangster as you will ever meet. And so you couldn't really imagine Tony Soprano sitting down to practice piano and singing songs, right? So that's more like my household, like um, my pops on the bandstand, to answer your question directly. Yeah, like when we were learning, like let's say I was 8 years old or 9 years old, I'd be hanging out with him and we'd be on a bandstand somewhere, and he'd call me up to the stage, and he'd go, one, two, a 1, 2, if it, boom, and he'd start playing, and everybody on stage would have to know what song, what key. He wouldn't call the tune. You know what I mean? If you're lucky, he'd play one note before he started, and you just have to be there. And that's the school of Freddie Cole. And a lot of us have come through it. Russell Malone, like I mean, so many young musicians. And my, in fact, all the guys I'm traveling with on this American tour that starts on the 15th of December at the Velvet Note will be the legacy band. Everybody in the band has been someone who was trained just like me by my father in his band over the last 40 years.
Wow, it's just amazing. So it was the family business, and you just had to know how to do it.
It's true. It was definitely, you know, some guys got a hardware store. I uh, I got singing and playing music to try to make the spirits of the world a little bit lighter.
Yeah. Well, let's just take a little bit of a side stop here, but the reason that you knew Tara Gorman
Mm.
was Up with People. So,
It's true.
and you were, could you tell us a little bit about that and how old were you? And I think people know some about Up with People, but they probably don't really understand what Up with People really did.
Up with People was part of the United States government, and it was part of you know, of operations for hearts and minds all over the world. And what it did was it got kids together from 125 different countries, put us together 125 at a time, and sent us out all over the world to go into the communities and do community activation and restoration, uh, you know, kind of community service acts, anything from building houses with the Amish to, you know, painting fence in the park, and then sell a show. And so we'd be on this bus tour and we'd send three people out 3 months in front of us to the city we wanted to go. And they would organize a place for everyone to stay, a concert, and then we'd roll into town and we'd do the show and keep going. And we did 40 states and 7 European countries in a year. And I did that at 17. I graduated college, I mean, high school a little early. Uh, and I started at and I think the government thing came in because I was already working for the government at the time for a guy named Max Cleland, who later became senator. He was Secretary of State at the time, and I was head of the computer science department before I could drive. So at that point, I had a full ride to Annapolis and all of that. And anyway, the night before the guys came to give me my letter from Annapolis, my boss Max sent me to see Amadeus,
Huh.
and I it I cried my eyes out for the entire movie, you know. And I was already with a girl I'd been with for 2 years who had picked out like 11 names for our kids, and we'd figure out where we were gonna live in the area. 'Cause I was gonna go to Annapolis and then finish at Yale. And I saw the the movie, and I got back to my desk after school. I went to work, you know, at the State Department. And on my desk was a handwritten note by Max, and Max lost legs and his right arm in Vietnam. So for him to handwrite a note with his left hand, was a big deal. It said, "Lionel, you have the world on a plate. I'm giving it to you. Just don't forget that the world is yours, and you should do what your heart tells you to do."
Wow.
And so yeah, I chose me.
But you chose you. That's a good choice.
So yeah, yeah. Well, actually, I think I've chose me. Realizing that's chose me is has been part of my journey with you, Jefferson. Like realizing that you know my equation has always been sort of I am third, and you know I finally realized that if I do put my mask on first in this in this magic carpet, I'll put myself first or almost first. I think always my calling to do art and to use the technology and stuff to change people's spirit is really my thing on the planet. But music is talking, the ways I really get to do it the most between, you know, my radio show and these new records, all the people I've been working with in the business for God, almost 50 years now. don't I get a gold watch or something? I mean, you
It's
need
in the
50 years
mail.
somewhere. You're supposed to get a gold watch, right? That's not quite 50 years, right?
Um,
Next year it'll be 50 years in the business.
wow. So, I mean, it's quite a story, and where you just found yourself, where, whoever dropped you into life here on Earth put you in an amazing place, and you took a lot of advantage of it, but there were also choices, and you've always made the choice for music, and I would say, goodness and understanding and compassion. You're such a good person, and you have so much to offer. It's great that you've got these. You have another album in addition to Cancel Christmas that's up for Grammy too. Now, so that's the cover in the back there, right?
It is. That record's super special. It's called With Love, and the title was inspired by my nephew Tracy, who sadly was just murdered. And he saw while I was on the road with my dad at the end of his life, that the guys were really pushing me to record some music. That was my music and my arrangements. So Tracy would hold my father off, um, and take him, on some, during a barbecue or whatever. And the guys would run a studio and record some tunes, and then come back to the gig. And Tracy heard one of the sets of tracks, and he was like, "Oh, I finally get it, Lionel. This is with love. This is this is how you're expressing your love for Grandpa, or for my dad." So yeah, this record is pretty. It means a lot to me, because it is a loving dedication to my father and the rest of the family, but really my father and his arrangements, and using his band. And I think he'd be as Freddie Cole said, he'd feel like we was keeping jazz alive and keeping hope alive by making this kind of music. You know,
Well, it's true. I mean, that's what music does, doesn't it? I mean, it does keep hope alive. It keeps the magic alive. Um,
I agree.
we had so many conversations out on the porch about, everything that you can think of, but one of the things, and I guess this may get a little bit to the point that I often ask guests on this podcast about, you know, what have you seen of the power of music, and how do we tap into that? This was the conversation we had about music shamans. And
Yes,
I was telling
yes,
you about a lot of my inspiration, Victor Wooten and his books, and his brothers Roy, and the music lesson book and the spirit of music book that Victor wrote had a guy named Michael who was the teacher, and the inspiration for that Michael was actually Michael Cott. And I'd been spending some time with him. We went out, we did a show in Santa Fe to see him, and he blows me in a way. And I was thinking, what is Michael? I mean, he knows so much. He's so smart. He's a music shaman. And I remember turning to you there on the porch, and we're talking about it. And I said, "Well, who else are music shamans?" I said, "Well, Victor's a music shaman. His brothers are music shaman." I said, "Well, Lionel, you're a music shaman." And you said, "Well, you're,"
and you're a music shaman.
and and so it was kind of, wow, am I a music shaman? And then we started thinking, and we thought of a lot of people who really are music shamans. They have some sort of
Yep,
connection and some sort of desire to take the music and, I don't know, not necessarily it from the playing the music part, but explaining it or whatever. What's your perspective of a music shaman? And now that, you know, we know we're music shamans, and there's a council of music shamans with a lot of other music shamans, and probably a billion music shamans out there.
it's true.
What do we do with that? What's your take on that?
Well, you know, you started the council, and you know, you put an interesting question out. You know, like what's sort of the purpose? This like this question, and I think that when you have this many people who start to recognize the power of positive waveform and putting that kind of positive waveform, you could, or I guess some ways it would, you almost want to call it positive particle theory. You know, you want that we put into each note we play, then resonates off of each of us that has the same kind of spiritual or auric vibration. And I think that actually does change the way the world works. I think and the reason I think that changes it is A, I see the difference that loving, support, and sharing of art and what that's done for my own life through our friendship and the growth that I've been able to come through, and the deep hole or chasm of sadness coming into COVID and out of COVID that making this music has done, and seeing the world literally come to push me forward because I made the vibrations. Like I didn't ask anybody to put me in the Grammys. Some friends of mine that I met through you guys in DC went, "Hey, we believe in you. You let me hear this record," and then they pushed me to do it, which then made me put the records out and accept myself. And um, so, yeah, I think that journey of self-acceptance and that taking responsibility for the fact that we do have an effect on people's energy, you know, because of the spiritual connection to our art, um, really has become my defining focus. And if that makes me a shaman, then namaste. That's awesome. That's the highest hope, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, realizing the sort of the power that you have, but you know, so many people who play have incredible power, but a lot of us, I mean, you're at a very high level of musicianship and people that you know and all that. And you know, there's others we just sit around and play some songs and think, well, I'm not that good or what have you. But when you kind of it helps you realize, you know, you are light and sound and healing and etc. Um, so in your career of playing, you know, with Mariah Carey and all over, I mean, you've probably done a million gigs all around the
About, yeah,
world.
probably.
Um, what do you see in the other musicians? What do you see in the audience? And how do you describe what music does for the people who are playing, the people who are appreciating, and all in between?
Well, I mean, growing up in the family, you know, and like the family always being in the media, like you always knew that a voice could change the way people feel. Like, you know, that was obvious. And being royalty adjacent, you know, as I am, I got to see the power of that. But it wasn't really until I was with Mariah that I got it. I ended up with Mariah. Yeah, run. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, watching the world explode." He says, "I need you in the studio in an hour." And literally, I got out of my car, up, and he's like, "Oh, cool. You know, turn on the TV tonight when you get home." And I turned on the TV, and it was Mariah Carey singing my arrangement on that tribute to heroes thing.
Mm.
Randy calls me in the middle of it and he goes, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I was like, "Whatever you tell me, Mr. Jackson." You know? And so that took me on this long, amazing tour when the world was in such an interesting place, you know. And I'll tell you two experiences from that experience that really showed me the power of music, like made me unable to um, deny it, you know, and my attachment to that. Because I think the power of music is not something that we create. It's something that actually flows through us. It's a goddess power that, you know, that we happen to be able to put our waveform. We can turn the dial to get there, and then open our spirit up as much as possible to let it out. And what the Super Bowl that same day, you know, after they got done, you know, and you know, Boston Pops is playing the thing, and we're on stage, and she's singing my arrangement, and all the presidents are there, and it's the biggest sporting event in history after that, right? You know, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I mean, I'm a C-level Hollywood guy. Like, how did I end up being the arranger of this? And as I'm thinking it, like, and this is right in between the second quarter and halftime, Paul McCartney, who was just in Australia like last week, he was doing the halftime show, and he came and he sat down right next to me, and I was like, "Oh, how you doing?" And he's like, "Yeah, how are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm all right." He says, "You probably think I don't know who you are," and I go, "Yeah," and he goes, "No, you might think no one knows what you're doing and how you're doing it and the energy you're putting out there, but those of us in the world who actually know it's you, and we know what you're doing, and we really appreciate it, and keep on doing."
Wow.
Yeah. He had no reason to say that to me. He had no reason to be kind to me. And of course, then everybody, ran up and split us apart and sent me to go get coffee because it's just a putz, right? But that really that has stayed with me, and thank you, Mr. McCartney, for that. There have been some very dark times when I was been able to remember that no matter how far down the tree I was making a difference. And the second story was that we were playing a bunch of concerts with Mariah a few years later, and the concert tour started to dip a little bit, and I was depressed. And they were doing my song as like the lead song because I just written my first number one hit, and it was her big comeback song. So when I was a kid, we moved from New York to Puerto Rico. So she brought this shaman out from Puerto Rico, from the jungles of Puerto Rico, to travel with us for a week and to kind of guide me. And that week we were at Red Rocks, which is a beautiful place to make it. Right. And he says, "We got 3 shows here." He says, "This is how you'll believe in yourself. Tonight, when you go on stage, just act the way you've been acting and watch the crowd. Now, yeah, you're at a Mariah Carey show, and this is Mariah Carey's hired him to talk to me, right? You're at a Mariah Carey show, but watch how the crowd reacts if you do just nothing, And it was a great show. I mean, sellout crowd, people, whatever. And now he said, and then tomorrow night he says, "Now let your sadness overtake. Just just go ahead and do nothing." And it was a terrible show. Like, everybody played the right notes, but we didn't connect. And the third night he says, "Now stop dimming your light. Know that she wants you to open up and give it all." And I gave it my all. And literally there was like 20-minute standing ovation at the end. People were screaming my name at her show, right? And now I make that personal because it's easy to try to put out there that we're changing people's lives, but when you see it, when you actually see 100,000 people be moved by the fact that you've changed your attitude from negative to positive, and when you get a scientific proof, right? And Mariah came to me after, and she says, "That's why you're on this tour. So you go all around the world and you see the difference that a little bit of positive energy can make to so many, and veterans and all sorts of people who through the rain helped. I got to see that. Like, I got to be there. I got to walk the neighborhoods where it's playing in the air. People are trying to come back together from this crazy 9/11 time, before most people's time out there, in your audience. But it just taught me some great lessons about the power of positivity, and that if I stay open, and it sometimes chooses to come through me.
So that's an interesting, almost like a science experiment or something, or a
Wasn't
psychology.
it?
I mean, you were asked to be one way or another way, and when you put it all out, when you really gave, it
Yep.
just made a huge difference in what the audience perceived.
and I'm just the piano player. You know what I mean? Like, so that was a real it was a humbling and blessed experience, you know, because it doesn't matter where you are on the stage, it doesn't matter what stage you're on, it doesn't matter how big the stage is or the reach. If you touch one person, you've done your job, you know, and if you tell your truth by touching that person, they'll probably touch someone else. And then it becomes a blessing. And I love blessing.
Wow. Well, that's what we're trying to do. You and I did the Concert for Democracy here in Brookmont, Bethesda, Maryland, and we
Which
had
was
a
awesome.
small little crowd, and you know, um, that's what we're trying to do is just make a difference every time. And I guess musicians feel that way. Maybe there's just such a, because the society is sort of upside down in terms of, all the people who care about money and, make a lot of money off other people, but the teachers and the musicians and the healthcare workers and stuff, they're kind of, it's a little hard sometimes to really push it out there, to keep treating those
True.
patients, to keep playing for those people who aren't listening in the back of the room or whatever.
Yep.
But you really
Yep.
can make a difference. But you have such a big personality. I don't know. You would think it'd be sort of easy for you to do that, but how do you, you're gigging now after the pandemic, and how's it feeling?
Well, it's nice to put my professional hat on. I've been here a long time, but and I've got a radio show on American Airlines that's doing great, and that's really awesome. You know, you inspired me to get up and get back into that business, and that's been wonderful. Uh, and so they're actually my age now is they have some partner and for it's Lionel Cole and Herbert Gavinovich. And I'm not sure what superhero, but I develop this side. No matter what I'm doing, if I'm composing, if I'm producing, if I'm writing, or if I'm just watching. Again, the energy transfer is what it's all about. You know what I mean? It is it is the key to everything. You know, someone's going to see this and feel our intention. That will make some difference in their life, which means we've done something good. Do that once a day. Everybody do something like that once a day. World increases by the world's peace increases by multitudes. You know?
Yeah, I think so. So you're also, you've been in, I mean, you've kind of been back and forth from Australia, US for years. You're Australia now, you were kind of stuck there during the pandemic. But one of the things we talked about a lot in some of our Porchang conversations was the indigenous people. And, the Aboriginal people in Australia are just sort of amazing. And I was reading that book by Tyson Yunkaporta, Sand Talk, how indigenous thinking can change the world. And, it's I believe that. I don't know that much about, indigenous people's music, but I have to think it was probably more fundamental to them than it even is to us. So do you have thoughts on the sort of the Aboriginal perspective? I mean, knowing in particular that you're in Australia and you're hanging out with some beautiful people from uh, you know the First Peoples and all. So
Yeah,
what's about that?
I'm really lucky to be surrounded by some first people who really, really love me and have accepted me. And I've been able, I'm not a black fella, but they my voice when I speak and they let me hear their truth when they speak, which is lovely. And, and um, such a connection, uh, right down to the bark they use, make the filament of, a didgeridoo, and the sonic properties of that didgeridoo, the waveforms they create. These are some of the oldest sounds on Earth. Some of the oldest organized storytelling and take. So to be here where these sounds that are so charged, that energy has just been transformative. And to now be spending more and more time in the culture and, really starting to understand lore, like the law of each, there's hundreds of nations of indigenous people here in Australia, and they're only 3% of the population, and yet they lead the way in advocacy, per capita, in the world. So it's a powerful place to consider whether you believe in change or not. And being around those powerful people makes me feel like change is not only the only answer, but the only sense. So that's been my experience. And the deeper I get and the more I'm opened up into it, and thanks to my partner and all that, it just really, really, I just feel more and more blessed that I get a chance to listen to what the unheard and try my best to translate it for you guys to check it.
Wow. So do you have any thoughts for, coming from, I mean, your long perspective in music, the music business, where you are now, to other musicians, young musicians, or just musicians? I mean, there is that, we've got a couple of gigs, you're going to make $25 playing at the bar and that sort of thing. But, sometimes I think everybody needs a little bit of a pinch or a kick or a nudge or something. But and you're such a wise person, that do you have thoughts that you might want to relay to some other musicians out there?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that would really have really helped me, and I've seen it help a lot of folks. And if you don't mind, Jefferson, I'll just kind of key them out on the fact that Jefferson and I are lucky enough to be able to support each other's artistic vision with our hearts and souls and our actions. And so one of the most important things to do, even though it's the hardest thing to do because it's a gift, it's a giving thing that we do, is to realize that we are worthy. We are worthy. And if there's one person or 1 billion people listening, it's a blessing. Like that's super important. And that, like my dad, he said he didn't get his first Grammy nomination until we started working together at 68 at the time. He said I'm an overnight success at 68 years old. You're never too old for an overnight success. Right? So, now I'm 55, and, we'll know in a couple of nights whether or not I make the short list of the Grammys. And, I guess you aren't ever too old. So never give up is the point. If this is what you believe in, no matter what you do, like you're an icon in multiple industries, and yet you spend your quality time reaching out to folks like me who wouldn't have a voice, or wouldn't have as clear a voice without your leadership, so that we can reach out to other people and continue to live our life, whether it be humble or, extravagant, um, of service through music, so I guess that's the fourth thing, really. You said three, but there's four, really. It's like realize you're of service. We're here to be of service, and part of that service is service to self, so we can clearly reflect back to people what they need, and keep raising the vibration. So don't give up. Believe in yourself. Don't be a jerk.
Well, yeah, all those for sure. Well, and even I talk with a lot of people and they say, well, I can't really sing, I played a little guitar, but I was terrible. And I'm like, no, everybody is a musician, everybody has a voice, and it's never too late. And so, you know, what you're suggesting is also sort of supportive of that. Music can change your life. It certainly changed mine. It's it 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 had a ginormous impact on your whole life, and it's been a blessing, as you say.
Yeah, it's funny, I like a lot of people, I fought the good fight against, the sadness that comes around being an artist and trying to find oneself and living in the modern world. And the one thing that's always been an anathema to that, has been the true medicine for that, has been letting in art, letting in. To me, music is the art that speaks the loudest with the fewest words. Whether you can understand the language that it's spoken in or not, uh, the intent cannot be hidden. And I think it's worth a lifetime of devotion and service. And so that's what I promised myself. My mom was funny. She's like, Lionel, you have such a big brain. You could do anything in the world. Says, well, and I was like, Mom, well, if that's true. I think I must have been like 6 years old. Well, Mom, if that's true, then I want to do the thing where I can help the most people. She says, well, what do you want to do? You want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a politician? I said, oh, those are all good things. But if you speak music, you could talk to everybody in the world. So I want to do music so that I can have a chance to tell everybody in the world that life's okay, you know? And that's, I mean, I know it's childish and probably, a little too naive and hopeful, but that's the part of me that's the artist that I now take care of first. And that little kid deserves to be that excited, sharing love and music with other people. Because then we're all on a playground learning together. Kindergarten gets better, not more tragic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's, because this is kindergarten here on Earth, so we could,
Kindergarten on Earth.
we might as well learn how to play together instead of throwing sand. So
That's great. Well, Lionel Cole, it's so great to see you and be able to talk with you. Thanks for taking the time to share your, parts of your life and your wisdom with us. You always bring a smile to my face, and
well,
I'm
that's
just
because we love each other, Jefferson.
that is it is it's I'll look forward to some porch hangs in the future, and if you're in the US, Lionel's coming around. He's got some gigs coming up in December, January, I think. He'll be in the
Yep.
stateside. So
Yep. Check out
yeah.
LionelColeMusic.com or LionelAndTheSwingersClub.com or any of those Lionel associated things for the tours. But we're December 15th, we start at the Velvet Note. We're at 54 Below on December the 21st in New York City on Broadway, which is great. My Broadway opening. Haven't done that since Birdland right before Dad died. And then we headline the Gainesville Jazz Festival the next month. And then we're at the Jazz Corner the second and third. And if the universe is willing, on the 4th of February, we'll be in LA at the Grammys.
That would be sweet. That'd be sweet.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed in good ways there. So, all right. Thank
And
you.
if I'm really lucky, then maybe in the middle of that month, I get to meet my buddy Jefferson in India and actually see
The
this
music
place that has
ashram.
it's opened its heart to me. That I'm living the magic carpet ride, and a lot of it's thanks to people like you and Tara. Our people and my children. The people in my life. Whether they have pushed me to change or grow. Um, no matter what the way it's come at me, has made me who I am, and I actually kind of like this guy now, and I'm really excited to get out back into the world and share him with everybody else.
Well, you've got a lot to
No
share.
expectations. Nobody likes it. It's the invitation's open.
Yeah, you got a lot to share. If you for folks out there, if you get a chance to see Lionel sometime, do it and go up and say hello. And
Get a hug. Hugs are free.
get a
Who wants
hug.
a hug's my hashtag.
It's so awesome. You're great. All right. Thanks, everybody. Lionel Cole. Check it out. See you soon.
Love you guys.
Have
Keep
a
hope
good
alive.
day.